All right, we're going to take a quick look at how to find the inverse of a function. Um, so we talked about before, a good way of thinking about inverses is saying I'm taking my input, I'm taking my output, and I'm swapping them. What's your input? That's x, right? What's your output? Well, that's y, right? So if I take my x, I take my y, I swap them, well, that's my inverse. Okay? So all I need to do here is rewrite this, but now my x is over here, my y is over here. All right? Now, this isn't very satisfying. I could leave it like this, but this doesn't really look like a function yet until I get y isolated, until I get it by itself. So I'm going to add 3. Excuse me. I'm also going to rewrite this just so you maybe understand a little better what's going on here, that this is a fifth root. We're going to talk a lot more about exponents at a later date, but for now, just know that 1/5 power is the same as fifth root. Well, how do we undo a fifth root? Well, we're going to take this, we're going to take the fifth power on both sides, x plus 3 to the fifth equals y plus 1. And then finally, subtract 1. And you may not like that I put the y over here, but otherwise this is done. And hopefully this should make sense to us. So look at what we're doing over here. Let's do this in order. We are adding 1. Then we're doing fifth root. Then we are subtracting 3. So if I want to undo this, I have to do the opposite thing in the opposite order. So the last thing we did is subtract 3. So the first thing I should do is add 3. And that's what we're doing. Then the next thing we did was the fifth root. So how do we undo that? We should do the fifth power. And that's what we're doing. Subtracting, or we added 1 first. So the last thing we do is subtract 1. Now, I'm not saying this is how you need to do the inverse. You can definitely do it algebraically here, but it should make sense. If I add 1 fifth root, subtract 3, then I've got to go backwards. Add 3, fifth power, subtract 1, to undo them in the opposite order. Okay? Let's take a quick look at our graphs. So if I graph this first guy, okay, it's a fifth root, except I've moved it left 1, down 3. So it should look something like that. Not my best work, but there you go. Now this should be a fifth power equation. It should look kind of like a cubic, except for it's been moved left 3, down 1. So it should look kind of like this. Now, it might be hard to tell from my really bad sketch, but these are reflections of each other over the line y equals x, okay? And you'll notice this first guy, it passes the vertical line test. This second guy also passes the vertical line test. So they are both functions here, okay? And they're reflected over this line y equals x. Now let's take a look at this one. Now this one is a little simpler, y equals x squared. So we're going to try to find the inverse of this. Y equals x squared. So I'm going to switch my x and my y. And then I'm going to get y by itself. I'm going to take the square root on both sides. Now, when I do that square root on both sides, I have to do this plus or minus thing. Now, you'll notice this doesn't seem to be one equation, it seems to be two, okay? That's because this guy isn't actually invertible. The inverse is not a function. Let's see what this looks like on a graph and see if you can see what I mean. All right, so here is my y equals x squared. Well, positive square root of x would be, excuse me, this guy. Negative square root of x would be this guy. Now, you'll notice it's that same reflection over the line y equals x. Okay, so it definitely is the inverse, but the problem is this red part is a function, this purple part is a function, but together they fail the vertical line test. Now, one of the ways that you can tell this is going to happen ahead of time is, you know how we use the vertical line test to see if no x's were repeating? Well, when we switch them, we need no y's to be repeating. Well, how can we tell that? With a horizontal line test. So this passes the vertical line test, so it's a function, but it fails the horizontal line test because we have repeating y values. And if we have repeating y values, for the inverse, that's going to be repeating x values. So on your assignment, if it asks you to find the inverse of this, you say, there is no inverse function, okay? This is like a piece of the inverse, but we need this other piece, which would make it not a function. Let's take a look at one more. I included this one because a lot of students have trouble inverting it. So we're going to take our x and our y, we're going to swap them. X equals 3 over y minus 5. Okay. So we want to get y by itself. Well, I certainly don't want it in the denominator here. So I'm going to multiply both sides by y minus 5. So all that happened here, I multiplied by y minus 5, that canceled. I multiplied by y minus 5, this is stuck over here. Want to get my x to the other side, so I'm going to say y minus 5 equals 3 divided by x. And then we're almost done. I'm going to add 5.